Hey guys, so I saw some movies and then I got sick and I didn't talk about the movies because I was sick, but now I'm less sick so I can talk about them. One of these movies is Spiral, the latest installment in the Saw franchise. Now I've always enjoyed these movies even if the quality shakes and sometimes they're not enjoyable. There are now 9 of these movies and I would only go so far as to call 3 of them actually good. Spiral is not as bad as 5 or 3 or especially 7, but it's still a bad movie. It is the best bad Saw movie, but it still is not good. Now, similarly to Jigsaw or Saw 8, you do not have to have seen the other Saw movies to understand what is going on in this one, but unlike Jigsaw, this one just does not connect to the plot of the main series at all. To be honest, if you just cut a couple lines of dialogue, you could sell this as a different film that was not part of the Saw franchise. This is not really a spoiler, but it's not in the marketing, so whatever. It's in the opening scene though, and they uploaded that, and it's very, very obvious in the opening scene, even though they don't specifically say it, and they say it like 2 scenes later, so whatever. The killer in this movie is not Jigsaw or one of his apprentices, it's a copycat killer. In the opening trap, you have your usual "I want to play a game" monologue, but the voice is drastically different, and then later on they're like, this is a copycat killer, it's just some guy. The killer in this movie even has their own new puppet with a unique design. The main thing that separates them, though, is that the traps in this movie are nowhere near the level of Jigsaw's, because Jigsaw's were usually a lot more entertaining. I'm not gonna go so far and say that the trap scenes in this movie are all bad, but despite bringing back Darren Lynn Bousman, who directed 3 other Saw movies, they fail to capture the Saw magic that they attempt to. They have the typical cinematography and editing of a Saw sequence, but much, much worse and more annoying. There's some gruesome kills for sure, but it also feels much less gory or high stakes or out there. Some of the kills in this movie are just downright lame. The way the movie is structured is also much worse for this. One of the fun things about Saw traps is the whole live or die aspect, and there's an actual tension as to whether or not it's happened, but nope, we get a scene where we find out someone's dead and then we see their Saw trap. We are fully aware that they were put in one, and then we just cut away from it and then cut back to it later after we know the outcome. In terms of what a Saw movie needs to work, this film kind of drops the ball entirely. It's basically much more a crime drama, and not a very good one at that. The actors are not directed very well, and the performances are inconsistent. There's a lot of terrible dialogue, there's only like 2 well-written characters in the whole film. Despite the multiple deaths in this movie, there is no weight to anything that happens, and it never feels like the main character is actually in any danger. The plot does not make any sense, and the twist is predictable, but also stupid. The Saw movies are always notable for having lots and lots of flashbacks, but in this movie, the main character flashbacks to things he did not see happen. I will say that this film did have a lot more polish than a lot of the Saw movies. There's a few really nice shots, and I like how the camera flows sometimes, even if sometimes the color grading is an issue. The editing throughout the movie is consistently really bad. It's like they took the editing style of the actual trap scenes and applied it to random scenes in the movie. Even past that though, just looking at the movie you can tell it has a bigger budget than some of the Saw movies, and I mean that's obvious from Samuel L. Jackson alone. He's only in the movie for like 15 to 20 minutes, but he's good, although there is a noticeable quality drop in his very last scene. In conclusion, this movie was kinda bad. It is a Saw movie that is barely a Saw movie, but hey, I had fun. It wasn't really boring, it was well paced at least. It was obnoxious, but not unbearable. If you like the Saw series, you might enjoy this. You might actually hate it, to be honest. The twist is really awful. But yeah, check this one out if you feel like checking it out, I guess. And I'm giving Spiral from the Book of Saw a 3 out of 10. It is closer to a 4 than a 2, but I'm giving a 3. I also saw the new Tom and Jerry movie, and shocker, it was not very good. For the most part, this is your regular bad kids movie. The humor is typical kids movie stuff, the characters' development is typical kids movie stuff, the plot is typical kids movie stuff, it's not interestingly shot at all or anything. There's montages, and there's poop jokes, and it's a typical bad kids movie. Most of the acting is typical bad kids movie stuff. Michael Pena is terrible in this movie. Chloe Grace Moretz does a decent enough job, but they give her absolutely nothing to work with. The scenes where she and Pallavi Chadha are just interacting are the best scenes in the movie. They have a nice chemistry. They are also the only 2 people in the movie who give a decent performance whatsoever. Whilst I'm on the things this movie does well, by the way, the production design in this movie is nice. I like how some of the environments look. They are sometimes pretty. That's it for the compliments, by the way. That is basically everything in this movie that they did well. Tom and Jerry are in this movie, and their designs look horribly out of place in these real-life environments. What the animators have done here does not look bad at all, but in the movie it just looks wrong. This is more of an issue with the CGI implementation than the actual animation. The Tom and Jerry slapstick feels reduced to regular kids movie slapstick, and as I said, most of it is regular bad kids movie humor, but there are some jokes in this movie that are just unfitting. The copyright joke at the start of the movie is so horrifically out of place in terms of the movie's humor. The line delivery of it is very wink wink, and that implies that it's for the adults, as if all of the adults in the theater will lose their shit over copyright jokes. It was barely a joke, you just made a reference. However, the main baffling thing about this movie, and to be honest, the main reason I'm even reviewing it in this much detail, is the fucking music choices. There is a music stinger like every 2 minutes, and it's always the most unfitting rap song. I don't know who you think the demographic of your movie is, Tom and Jerry, but they are not listening to Rick Ross. It is so constant, and it literally never makes sense in the context of the movie. It's so out of nowhere, I didn't understand why. The amount of unfitting licensed songs in this movie were its own joke. And to be 100% honest, the film is worth watching for this aspect alone. To be honest, this movie was surprisingly watchable considering I went with a friend and we both kinda made fun of it. This is the kind of movie I imagine drunk people will love. I would recommend this movie if you get some friends and make fun of it and watch it if not just for the soundtrack, because that aspect is baffling. Otherwise, there is absolutely no reason to ever watch this movie, especially if you are looking for actual quality. If you have a toddler, they might be entertained by this, otherwise don't take your kids, I'm sure there's something more entertaining for them. Your kids will be more entertained with Legos, just give them some Legos. Also, I'm swinging in at the end here because I forgot to mention this when I initially recorded this and talked about the music, but Tom has a musical number and it's performed by T-Pain and it's really weird and bad and I hated it. It was kind of hilarious, but not for any intended reasons. I would like to know what drugs the music supervisor for this movie was on and where I can find them. And I'm giving Tom and Jerry a 2 out of 10. That's the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe, check out my music available on all streaming services. I'm bad at outros, and I'll see you in whatever I do next.